And lastly, to switch gears here to Susana Morales. Go ahead.
Okay, so Ms. Morales, she had the 5839 number, which is through T-Mobile. And so these slides will show what we can tell about her phone. And so again, we've changed colors. We've assigned her a blue. You will see here, this is at 5:31 p.m. on July 26th. We're back on that exact same tower that we saw in the first slide with Mr. Bryant. And so this is a T-Mobile tower location, but we're on a sector that's more consistent with her home at 1218 Santa Ana Drive. Again, 5:31 p.m. It's an outgoing phone call. And this is a close-up view of the previous slide to help you see the consistency between where the tower and sector is and the coverage area of that tower and sector encompassing per resident.
Okay. And the next slide here.
So this is by 7:17 p.m. We are still on the exact same tower that we talked about before. You'll see we've changed sectors. So this could be very consistent with movement. By 7:17 p.m., an incoming phone call from the 6730 number. So our azimuth is 40 degrees. We've seen this tower and sector in previous records, but you just see her device communicate with it as well. So this is a close-up version of the previous slide to show you the relationship between Ms. Kelly's apartment and where that tower and sector is. And just previously we would have shown you her residence, which is here. So it's all in close proximity, but the phone by this time would have had to have been somewhere northeast of the residence, somewhere consistent with Singleton Road, Indian Trail Road, somewhere in this area, maybe a little north of it.
If Ms. Morales was walking from her home to the Sterling Glen Apartments at this time on Singleton Road, would this be consistent with receiving a phone call, being there on Singleton Road, walking to the Sterling Glen Apartments?
Yes, I mean, if somebody was in this area walking down Singleton Road here, this is the apartment complex. If someone was walking in this area, I would absolutely expect a T-Mobile account to communicate with that tower because it's so close.
Okay. And the next call here, or the next slide, excuse me.
So I looked at everything else that occurred on the phone, and between 10:17 p.m. on the 26th and 5:36 a.m. on the 27th, there were a total of 76 events that took place on the phone, calls. Most of it was just these incoming phone calls from other people. Every one of those transactions took place with the tower and sector. It's exactly the same tower and sector that we talked about previously. Even though it's later in time that night, starting, because we flipped forward at around 7 p.m., we're now at about 10 p.m., so there's a gap in time where we don't have any information. We don't know what the phone was doing during that time. But our next event is at 10:17 p.m., and every event transpired through this tower and this sector.
Now, so that was going to be, and you may have just answered some of my question. The previous call, 7:17 p.m., that Susana's phone logged, there were, in the records that you were provided that were obtained for her phone, were there any other calls or texts that were able to be, that you saw in the records between 7:17 p.m. and 10:17 p.m.?
Well, for T-Mobile, we don't get location information for text messages. So the only information in her phone with location information would have been phone calls. So yeah, there's nothing at that time that I could determine any location information.
Now, beginning, so you, let's go to the next slide and we'll get there and explain. And what are we looking at here?
So this is a view of the records, a partial view of the records from T-Mobile for Susana's phone. This is how they look when we get them from the phone company. So there is some additional information over here, but we don't need it to show what I need to show you here, which is that you'll see that they give us the data in a spreadsheet. There's dates, times, duration. We talked about that before. There's a call type, numbers dialed, who's calling, and you'll see that in that time period, we have some additional information over here. We have some service code information. We have what's called a switch name, and then we have the LTE site, right, and sector. That's what this is. So when you see LTE and site, think tower. When you see sector, think about that 120-degree coverage area, or that area that could be within 120 degrees. And so what I saw here was something happened in the records that indicated an event to me.
Go ahead and explain what that is that you observed.
So I see here the time column. Now, if you're looking at the time column, you may be very confused about these times, because this event, the first event at the very top, is at 9:10 a.m. And I'm going to pick up on this event right here at 9:36 a.m. And you say, well, how is that relevant? That's because some phone companies do something called keeping time in UTC time. Universal Time Coordinated is a standard for time that T-Mobile uses, AT&T uses. And what that does is they don't give us the records in our time zone. We have to convert the records to our time zone. UTC is the standard, so yeah, you can go anywhere in the world. If you know where you are and you know what the UTC time of the record is, you can determine the time where you are. And so in our Eastern Standard Time Zone, when we change times during the year, we either spring forward or fall back, that we have to adjust for that as well. So at this time of the year, summertime, we would subtract 4 hours from this number to get our Eastern Standard Time, because it's in UTC. And we know that from the phone company because they tell us up at the top that they're giving it to us in UTC time. So we do that conversion and we find that 9:36 a.m. in the records really means 5:36 a.m. in the records. And that's the beauty of the software that I talked about in the beginning. Some of the software we use to look at this stuff is it does those conversions for us, but we don't always just trust it to be right. We then go in and manually look at the records and see if we can find manually in the records what we saw in the map. So at 5:36 a.m., something happened. At 5:36 a.m. and every call before that, the phone company was able to log a tower location and a sector. But after 5:36 a.m., the next event occurs at 6:25 a.m. 5:36 a.m., we have a location. By 6:25 a.m., we have no location information for these transactions. That tells me that this device, by 6:25 a.m., is no longer in communication with the network. So something had to have been done with the device to make that happen. And there's a couple possibilities. One is the phone battery died, or somebody took a SIM out and disconnected it from the network. Or put it on airplane mode. If something happened at that time, it's consistent with the battery having died.
Somewhat of an inverse question. Before 5:36 a.m., because towers are being notated on all of the calls, and I think you said you documented 76 calls in that time period from 10:17 p.m. until 5:36 a.m. But in that period of time, those 76 calls, all of those were documented with tower locations.
Right.
Does that indicate that that entire time the phone had battery and was powered on?
Yeah, that's the only way that could have happened.
All right.
There's no way for the phone company to have registered that information without communication with us.
So impossible for the phone to have died at 10:30 p.m. or midnight or 2 a.m. or anything like that for it to be logging those towers.
That's not possible.
Okay. Now, all of the calls from 10:16 p.m. until 5:36, the 76 calls that you observed in the records, were you able to observe whether Susanna answered any of them?
No, I don't believe so. In fact, and to be fair, when we say that there's events happening, you'll see in there some outgoing data, But when you look over here at the service code, what you find is that it's rolling out the voicemail. So even though it shows on the records as outgoing, it's just rolling out. So it's rolling, the call's coming into the phone and then rolling out the voicemail.
So after 10, you have the phone calls at 7:17 p.m. that we looked at on a slide a few slides ago. And from 10:17 p.m. all the way until the phone dies at 5:36 or sometime right after 5:36 a.m., she doesn't answer a single phone call from anybody
Well, that's correct.
and doesn't make a single phone call to anyone.
I mean, like I say, you'll see the outgoing, but that's not indicative of making a phone call because of that service code.
Okay. I want to, and if you can have a seat, sir. Just very briefly ask you, are you